Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to see that from different parts of the world, you have taken opportunity to accept our invitation and look forward where IPCSA can contribute to enhance their existing knowledge on customs processes and procedures at present and in the near future. It is our role to support port community systems, cargo community systems, and single window operators in their efforts to optimize their trade facilitation goals. Platforms to enable traders to facilitate the single submission of data, hence to reuse same in the operational and governmental processes and combinations of same. Customs are a key partner in the daily port process, facilitated by our member platforms. To my opinion, it is evident that for creating the optimum value of trade facilitation using PCS in and around the port, customs must be involved in the development and creation of PCS platforms. Both speakers of today, Frank Janssens and Uwe Liebschner, do have a professional track record where customs, legal, and implementation of routines play a pivotal role. Both do have practical experience in implementing business to government processes globally, whereby port community systems play a vital role in the communication between both. Not to forget that Uwe Liebschner represents IPCSA as customs expert on EU level in Brussels, where on a regular basis, meetings with the member states take place to discuss, giving advice and approve new customs processes. Before I give the floor to both, I inform you that the presentations will become available on our website. So, of course, you are allowed to make notes. I will not prevent you from that, but you will find the presentations later on back again. And for any questions today, please raise these using the Q&A and chat function of Zoom, and we will start the Q&A after the last presentation. Those questions that are not handled due to time constraints of this webinar will be responded by email. Apart from that, the complete webinar will be recorded and become available on IPCSA's YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, the first speaker of today will be Frank Janssens. Frank is an international expert in the domains of streamlining customs procedures, border management, and finally, encouraging trade facilitation. His professionalism and expertise to major international institutions for projects globally are considered as world-class. Today, Frank will take you into the global perspective about optimizing customs information flows that enhance trade facilitation and ensure improved compliance. Frank, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hans, first of all, for the invitation, and secondly, for the introduction. I have prepared a number of slides, and I will be sharing them with you from now on. Yes. So, as you can see, this is the background slide. In fact, we will treat three aspects. The first is optimizing customs information flow. The second is enhancing trade facilitation. And the third one, closely related to it, is to ensure improved compliance. And we will look at that from a global perspective. So the presentation has about 5 points that I would like to handle during the presentation. So it concerns the main drivers for optimizing customs information. The first one is the trade facilitation agreement, which is from the World Trade Organization. Second point is increased global competition, which leads to reduced inventory and just-in-time deliveries, which have, of course, an impact also on customs. Important is also the continued threats in the field of safety and security. then known to all of us, unfortunately, that COVID-19 and the pandemic, which has led to reduced human intervention also in the customs world. And then the last 2 points I want to handle are a bit more technological. So first, the fast evolutions in digitizing the transport sector. And then the last one is data science in general. How can data science be used by customs or influence customs? So that's in short the topics I would like to handle. First point is the trade facilitation agreement, so which was proposed by the World Trade Organization and already approved. I think it's around 200 countries already. And this is a real push for a better functioning of international trade. And as you know, customs play a prime role in international trade. I will not go over it in detail, but it contains things like availability of information, which can be represented in trade information portals, also in single window. Then we have issues like Article 6, the disciplines on fees and charges. As you know, in many countries, there were fees and charges of different amounts and different multitudes of fees and charges. So that tries to put some streamlining in it. Also the release and clearance of goods, which has to go much faster. So these things are all important and should lead to an annual growth of GDP, so gross domestic product, of, I would say, between 1/3 and 0.5% for countries, which makes a huge impact over the years. So it's very much an important agreement. And I must say, and that's why I have started with that, that it's an agreement which will especially benefit the emerging economies and also the developing countries. And I will give you an example where you can see that we're departing, for example, in Africa from lots of informal trade and I would say very misty procedures which differ from place to place. Now also in Africa, we have things which are becoming more and more active. I have chosen an example from e-commerce. So now it is possible, as in the example here, to order e-commerce goods over the internet and have them delivered. The example here is Rwanda. And now in this, just last weekend, Kenya was added to it. It is a cooperation, of course, with the Emirate of Dubai. As you can see from the site, it's dubai.com. And it's an example where in the African world, really international trade now has very clear rules and things go fast. People get their things on time. They are not stuck for days or even weeks at the border. So the trade facilitation agreement has really made a change there. And there is a huge multitude of projects to implement all of the articles we have seen on the previous slide. So especially also by international donors, there are dozens and dozens of projects which gradually will ensure that the agreement is implemented everywhere. So that is very important for customs because it makes things going much more smoother and streamlined. Now, the second point is increased global competition. And as I have said in my introduction, leading to just-in-time deliveries. What does it then mean for customs? Well, a first thing which is now already known in quite a number of countries are what we call pre-arrival declarations, which means you're allowed to submit your customs declaration before the goods actually arrive. A few years ago, this was not possible, but now this becomes more and more, I would say, common practice. And then you have to signal when your goods have arrived. And then you will immediately know whether it was selected for inspection or not. If it was not selected for inspection, your goods are released, I would say, almost immediately after arrival. In some countries, they go a step further and you have what we call pre-clearance. Pre-clearance means also that you declare before the goods arrive, but it also means that you get the green light to release the goods before they arrive, at least if you're not selected for inspection. But in fact, when you're on the road, you know where to go. And you can see from the pictures on the right-hand side, this is a border crossing point with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And there, because it's a bridge, and they had to find ways to stop all of the traffic jams, and they introduced this pre-clearance. Third point I want to mention is increased access to simplified procedures, which are based on authorized economic operator, know your customer, and such kind of programs, where known traders are much less selected for inspection, and they can also then therefore move their goods much faster across the border. Another aspect is the continuation, unfortunately, of safety and security threats, but also there the IEO security program builds on it and tries to certify companies which have a good track record for being compliant and will be subject to less controls. There is also now, and this is what is the latest development in the customs world, is that IO, which was started in the customs world, is now being extended to other domains and other agencies active at the border. And there is a conference between 25 and 27 of May organized by the World Customs Organization, especially on IO. And there I will be involved in a panel discussion which is about including the agricultural authorities into the IO aspects, and therefore that also compliant companies who have a good record, for example, for not bringing any diseases in the country, can get certified beyond the customs aspect, but also to agricultural aspects. But there are panel discussions on several subjects to enlarge the scope of the, I would say, of the principle of authorized economic operators. So this is also a very important movement. Then another aspect which especially will interest the members of IPCSA is an evolution which started, of course, by the creation of port community systems, which then gradually has evolved in a number of countries into the creation of either maritime single windows or customs single windows or logistics single windows. This principle is now further developed in what we call advanced logistics trade platforms. So the first aspect of it is that it covers not only maritime or air transport, but it includes more and more also land, rail, and also inland waterways transport, and it tries to set up a digital approach or exchange of information from end to end. This is very important, and also, and their IPCSA is involved, also exchange of information between ports or between airports, so across either the air or the sea, in order to have information exchange end to end. This example comes from Abu Dhabi, which is also a member of IPCSA, and they're involved in creating this advanced logistic trade platform, which will also include a number of services, I would say commercial services to the users, like availability of transport, insurance, banking, and things like that. So it's a global concept which put all of the requirements together and provides solutions. So this is also a trend that we see, that these kinds of platforms become more and more, have more and more functionality. Then what ways are there now to further speed up the crossing of the border? Well, interesting initiatives of digitalization are, first of all, the ETIR, so it stands for Transit Arrangement, Transport International Routier, TIR, and which has for many years a paper carnet, so a booklet, and now it exists also in an electronic version where there is exchange of standardized messages. A similar initiative is for temporary admission, where you also have a paper booklet, which is called ATA, from temporary admission. And now also a system has been created to exchange electronic messages, which replace the pages in the booklet of ATA, or in the other case for transit or for TIR. So these are the things which are now, I would say, in the pilot project stage, but more and more pilot projects are being run. And I don't think it will take very long before a real network is operational. Another interesting aspect is in terms of transport documentation. So the CMR, which is an international document based on a convention, and now there is an electronic version of it where also lots of pilot projects are being run. So there is a international standard for that, but the practical implementation is being tested out in several countries, and it is something important. To that, I want to add that in the EU there is a new regulation called EFTI, so Electronic Freight Transport Initiative, which will also digitalize not only the CMR, but in principle all of the transport documentation by 2025. So in 5 years' time, you will not only have electronic customs clearance, but you will also have electronic transport documentation, and that will open in itself a number of new opportunities. The last example I have chosen is the CN22 or CN23. This is a document, a paper, which is for postal traffic. But as you know, for postal traffic and especially e-commerce, a lot is changing. They have the safety and security declaration, which became mandatory in Europe. There is also changes in the taxation of e-commerce, and there also electronic exchange of information has become a necessity to ensure the speed of flow of the packages being transported and distributed from the producer to the consumer. So this is another example of changes where customs is involved. Of course, all of these things I have just described help the customs to improve the risk management, because digital information means you have the information in advance and you can run your risk analysis engines in advance, and you can much quicker inform the traders whether there is an inspection required or additional information required, or whether the goods are released and can pursue their transport. Then a bit, I would say, related to that is also the increased tests and pilot project for virtual customs corridors, because often you have practical problems on transit. That first of all, transit requires a lot of paperwork to fill out and to control it. It also is costly because you have to employ staff to do it, and some of the transit systems even have a price to be implemented. So what is being tested is, for example, between dry ports and ports, is to move the goods without transit arrangements. Same is true for transport between bonded warehouses and also between free zones and actually ports. So at a fixed route and at a reasonable distance, it is now possible with electronic tools, as you can see on the pictures, to keep an eye on the traffic. So they stay on the route with RFID, with cameras, with automatic number plate recognition, and so on. So they are controlled in an electronic way, and they can be liberated from creating transit movements and doing the necessary, I would say, paperwork or digital work to have the transit procedures established and later on to close them. So this is definitely a trend which is going on. Also in the Middle East, this is very much tested, and I will go to the next slide, where, as I said, the technology which are used is RFID, Also automated number plate recognition, then also tracking by GPS, so the location, e-seals on either on the container or on the truck itself. There is also information exchange, which is possible, use of company ERP systems so that they provide customs with the information on what is being moved. So that is being done. There is also the use of a lot more electronic seals where people can see from a distance whether the cargo has been tampered with or not. So these are all progresses, especially, as I said, in COVID times where they try not to have the customs officials too much in contact with the transporters or traders, and any control that can be done at distance is of course an advantage. And the last point I wanted to make is that all of the available electronic information can be used for improved risk management, where they can use not only the declaration information, but all kinds of other information that the customs administration can obtain. And I will come back to that later in my presentation. These are just a few examples of implementation of this idea. On the right-hand side, you see pictures of the port of Casablanca in Morocco, where in the middle picture, you see the kind of traffic jams you have because the port is surrounded by a city of 6 million people. And now they are implementing what they call the e-port, and that works exactly with the technologies I have described a moment ago. And it enables the traffic to be much better organized, to have one directional traffic. Before, trucks were going in all kinds of directions. Now they come in at one gate in the port and they move through the port under control. They go, for example, to the scanning device, to the terminal, then they load again and they exit from the terminal. Everything is recorded on camera and identified. In terms of number plate recognition, container number recognition, and so on. So that is definitely a major advantage for busy ports, especially if they're located in large cities. There is also another picture then on the left-hand side of the bonded corridors, which are being established between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. So because border posts can be very remote. Normally, there is not very much staff available. So any tasks that can be done either in the port or airport or in the capital city where most of the trade is going on and taken away from the border is very helpful. And then I mentioned the advanced trade logistic portals already. So it also exists apart from Abu Dhabi, as I said, also in Dubai, Singapore, and so on. It's something which is now being studied in several countries and administrations. And then we come to the last chapter of my presentation, is how can customs, with the information that is more and more available in electronic format, how can they use this to their benefit by having less intervention? So the idea is to have less inspections and make the traffic flows go much quicker, but also trying to avoid human contact, especially, as I said, in times of COVID. So one technology which is now used more and more is machine learning. So the systems of customs are, with the history that they are building up, is improving the risk management of the goods that are crossing the border, and are also enriched by information which is of course found outside the declaration and outside the historic track record which customs have, but they also use other sources of information so that the machine can gradually build up its knowledge and fine-tune its proposals for inspection, which are of course always in the end decided by human beings, as you need to kind of balance the level of staff available and the necessity of doing controls. One way now of exploiting information, which is not in declarations and not in your historic records, is what we call natural language processing. So the system itself can, through, for example, looking into the internet or other sources of information, can read normal language or natural language as it is, and it can process it in, I would say, in computer language, in, if you like, logic parts which lead to conclusions. So that is a big step forward, that now this sub part of artificial intelligence can use better and better the natural languages for being processed and supporting then, of course, the risk management system. So they can become more and more precise, which means that the level of discovering non-conform consignments goes up, but that the overall level of number of controls of compliant people is going down. In other words, if you're a knowledgeable trader, you apply the law as it is, then you will have fewer and fewer controls. It means if you're either not honest or not very knowledgeable about the rules and you make frequent mistakes, your chances of being caught are growing by the minute, I must say, as the technology is being progressed. Then I come to the last example of how technology and information can be used by customs. As many people in participating in this webinar may be familiar with the idea of digital twin. It is very much popular now in the maritime and also in the air environment. And it is a concept which makes a digital image of what really goes on, either in a seaport, as you can see in the middle, or in an airport, as you can see on the left-hand side, which actually depicts on the screen the position of vessels, the position of trucks, the position of containers, and so on. So you can have digital interaction with your colleagues, and you can have discussions on how to solve problem. For customs, they know exactly then where the goods are, they can follow it, and they don't have to go outside, where also there is more and more machine intervention, and it's dangerous, I would say, for humans to walk around in a fully busy and automated port. So they can follow all of the actions on the screen using the digital twin, and they can make it known to the port, to the terminal operator or to the port authorities where they would like something to happen, either select for inspection or having a scan done or checking something for illegal immigrants and so on. So this is a new phenomenon, a new technology, which is also gaining I would say, grounds very rapidly. It's not the customs who create the digital twin. Customs is one of the interested users of ports, airports, and so on, for the different authorities and commercial services that are there, are creating the digital twin, but it's definitely beneficial for customs that they can combine their own information with activities to be seen on the digital twin, and it helps them to do their work better and quicker. Then we come to my last slide. The last slide is a provision of information, because you have now seen quite a lot of these things, and probably you ask yourself, well, how do I know what goes on in the world of customs? Of course, if you're a customs official in one of the administrations, you have your organization, and of course you have access to all kinds of information. I can inform you that there is a network of customs practitioners. It's a European network. It's called Pan-European Network of Customs Practitioners. It is destined for customs officials, but a lot of the information is publicly available. There is, for example, as you can see on the right-hand side, a magazine which is regularly published. We have there a website, so which you can see there on the slide. You can visit it, and there are also a number of studies which are publicly available. And a few examples are also to be seen on the slide, but you can find them on the website. So if you want to explore yourself what goes on, and with regular interval you want to check if there are any novelties which are interesting, then you have to do this, because most of the participants in this network are people involved in applying these new technologies. And as I said, they publish articles on them, they perform together studies. There are several or many customs administrations which are a member of the organization, and also there are regular events organized for customs officials which are not from member countries, but which are interested in the content, and then they can find also information. But as I said, if you're not a customs official, still there are a lot of interesting things which you may want to look at when you have a minute of time. I think, Hans, this was the end of my presentation. You have my details if later on you want to contact me for further information or questions. As Hans said, I will make an effort together with Uwe to answer all of the questions as presented. So, Mr. Chairman, that was it from my side. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attention.
Thank you very much, Frank. It's really impressive to see the world where you're living in and what you're acting on and what's happening in the world. Just see that the processes that are there that are now enhanced by using the tools that are available, and that all over the world. So there are a lot of going around, and I want to say also good morning, afternoon, or evening to those who were not present at the very beginning and maybe come halfway into your presentation. For those as well, the presentations will be available on our website after the seminar of today. And the whole, let's say, webinar is recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. So you can relax, sit back later on again and review what has been said by Frank just now and what will be said by Uwe Liebsner from now, because the next one on the floor will be Uwe Liebsner. Uwe has extensive experience and knowledge in the field of the current developments of the Union Customs Code, UCC, with regards to the implementation of IT projects and their integration into the process flows and logistics and customs clearance, and represents IPCSA at the European Commission for Customs Matters. Uwe will today highlight the role of electronic customs, the customs process flows in a digital world. So Uwe, I'm very much pleased to give you the floor now for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Hans. Good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure for me to continue now the comprehensive overview of what was done by Frank already. So I think it's always a good thing to watch a controversial discussion, especially when the presenters are on opposite opinions. I have to disappoint you now because I'm going to support the views of Frank nearly in total. But please allow me, before I'm really starting my presentation, that I'm switching my camera off because it's a bit strange to see myself talking to myself. So, at the beginning, there you go.
Yes, it's there.
Okay, but I have to
go to slide number 1.
Where is it now? You see now the whole of the slides?
No, No, yeah, of course, we see on the left side the slides themselves, but in the middle it's slide number 4 instead of slide number 1.
Yeah, I see.
You have to go backwards one more, I think. Yes.
So let's start. At the beginning of my part, I would like to highlight that I'm going to focus my thoughts more on a general remarks related to that topic for today.
Uwe, can I just interrupt? You're just in presentation mode, so we're seeing both the slide and the next slide. If you can just put it onto slideshow for the whole screen.
The problem is I do not really see the...
If you go to the bottom or top of your PowerPoint presentation, you can use the
now we have it.
Button.
I think now we have it.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Anwar, for pointing that out.
Good. So I start again. So I'm going to focus myself on general questions, on general remarks regarding that topic for today, digitalization and customs. You will see in my presentation only pictures. Why? Because I like, Hans said it nicely, lay back and relax. I would like to invite you not to relax that much, be curious, and yeah, be part of the discussion then a little bit later on. What Hans mentioned in the beginning is, yes, the slides will be available on our webpage. So beside my pictures, I have also some slides with bullet points which underline my thoughts I'm going to present to you during my presentation. But you can't see them now in the presentation, but then afterwards, when you are going to download the presentation, you have it then in front of you. So that were the general things for the beginning. Before we turn to the actual point of the discussion, that means digitization around customs processes, I think it is more than important to put the overall situation into the right context and to establish a common understanding as a basis for this topic. First of all, we should consider that what is expected from a governmental entity. In particular, we must take into account the mandate and the task of customs administrations for our common goal, the effective and efficient organization of global goods movements. This initial situation then helps us to evaluate the possibilities fairly and to accompany and above all support initiatives critically but constructively. So let's take a quick look at the main key elements to consider in understanding the core mandate of customs. I think it's not a secret and not surprising for all of us that customs administrations play an important role in budgetary planning in the state and thus specifically in state revenues. Collecting customs duties and import taxes are still considered as important part of the fulfillment of tasks. However, other tasks are playing an increasingly important role and require a high level of competence, performance, and intelligent organizational structure from customs administrations. The importance of protecting society and the associated safety and security measures already mentioned by Frank in his presentation for the domestic market ultimately also benefits economic operators. However, one mandate should not be overlooked. This mandate I'm talking about is that customs administrations play a crucial role in trade facilitation, and their contribution to the prosperity of society should not be underestimated. And with this statement, as well as the clear recognition that trade facilitation has a very significant role and value, and is gaining more and more importance also in the daily activities of customs administrations, we can now take care of the interests and the expectations of the business community. So, in addition to processes for the cross-border movement of goods that are as burdenless and effective as possible, costs and the manageable use of resources are always key issues. In times of global interconnection and for the most part, very complex, highly automated production processes, the time factor is the crucial component in the discussion concerning the interaction of logistics and customs. Buzzwords such as 24/7 principle or on time, on sequence delivery are immensely important in view of the very specific design of production flows and their connected logistics. But it is not only in business that the time factor is playing an increasingly important role. In recent months, we have all had to learn that terrible events such as a pandemic push supply chains worldwide to the limit. The challenges, especially for the fast and uncomplicated delivery of protective equipment, medicines, and everything that goes with it, entered a new dimension. Finally, it should not go unmentioned that new shopping habits also require a reorientation for the organization of another effectivity in the flow of goods. The activities in the e-commerce environment make questions about the future improvement of trusted partnership and a different pace in the topic of digitization unavoidable. When I'm talking about trusted partnership, and you all have followed the explanations of Frank before, so there was a topic or a bullet point of how to make the AEO programs more attractive or much better, or what are they standing for, then I think one of the things should be really worked out or mentioned, not from the viewpoint of the economic operators, more from the viewpoint of the governmental entities. That is the topic or the question of the mutual recognition. When we are talking about the AEOs and the trusted partnership, then every one of us has in mind that there will be a simplification and a faster process and less of controls, and I'm really a trusted party to customs. But when it comes then to my global supply chain, sending goods from China via a stopover in Singapore, a stopover in the Emirates, a stopover wherever, is then in the whole of the supply chain, have I done a full AEO flow? Yes or no? And I think that is a crucial point of where for the future activities around AEO, and I'm really curious to hear more about that in the upcoming AEO conference, if there are good steps forward and that the right economic areas in the world are going to work on that fact to have a better mutual recognition of AEO standards. So where are the challenges for those who are involved? The launch of digitization initiatives and their successful implementation and rollout is not rocket science in today's world, but it's also not a topic that can be solved with just a few simple steps. Nevertheless, we need to be clear about the issues up front. What are the pitfalls and which basic questions should be clarified or constantly accompany the digital process. First and foremost, there is the legal framework. Does the applicable customs legislation give permit for the exchange of data in electronic form in its entirety? And what exactly are the regulations for the use of electronic infrastructure? Even Europe, the EU, had to modernize the applicable law in order to lay the right legal foundations for an electronic customs world. In the EU Union Customs Code, general legal requirements were manifested in order to be prepared for the digital future. This is the basis for all those involved in the process to be able to act together in a future-oriented manner. Furthermore, it should be noted that an idea or the decision on the customs side for introduction of electronic systems is good in principle, of course, no question, but must be considered in the overall context. What I mean by that is that customs administrations often, or not often, normally act as border champions, not only to fulfill their own tasks, means that countless activities are carried out in, I call it now, representation of other partner competent administrations, such as veterinary, export control agencies, phytosanitary, and so on and so forth. These must, of course, be involved and respected in the discussions. Often one encounters the situation that different levels of development in different agencies, different legal bases, and of course also financial possibilities slow down projects and initiatives. The lack of clear political mandate can be the reason for a disappointing approach, or it's not really meaningful implementation. The introduction of the single window as an example for customs and border protection in the US took them, it's called the ACE system, took them more than 20 years to go live. The reason behind the whole thing was that they worked on the solution very carefully by talking to more than nearly 50 different agencies to connect them, but it was simply a lack of a political mandate from the parliament or the president or from the right political body to go for it and bring it onto the last final successful track. In addition to the existence of the necessary legal framework, other challenges worldwide, by the way, need to be identified. These include data quality, further efforts towards data harmonization, and the cross-border exchange of data. When I'm talking about harmonization, or I think, Hans, that would be a nice topic now for you, because you are very keen each and every time in that to mention it really often that harmonization is a key and also a challenge to work further on to bring the harmonization across the whole supply chain. When I'm talking about harmonization in the customs world, it should be mentioned that we move, as a very simple fact, we should move away from the thinking of documents to data sets. That's the first step. I have that much of experiences still right now where the legal bodies of countries are talking about how to create an electronic document. What is that? What is an electronic document? I ask the audience now. Also, what I like to mention when I'm looking on harmonization is, and harmonization in the customs world, is I take out a simple example. It's the example of when you go for the simplification of entry in declarants records. That is a very nice simplification, and I call it all the time the paradise for economic operators. So you bring your goods to your premises and you declare it by entering them into the records, and customs is more or less out of the game until the time or the moment comes that you are going to send in your supplementary or your comprehensive collected declaration, what you send into customs. That's fine, but we have a nice discussion each and every time across the world, by the way. What do customs organizations mean by access to the records? I had this, I addressed that question to representatives from the UK after now that they left us. And it was interesting to hear that the UK interpretation of where the records are kept is not really of interest for them. They have to be available to customs, to Her Majesty Revenue and Customs. But what does that mean? Make them available to them. So this discussion is with different experiences from other countries. Some of them want to have a direct access in lifetime, in real time. Others say, no, it's nice for us when we have once a month, you give us the data warehouse extract, and that's it. So I don't want to stress that point, but I think harmonization should be also discussed around that issue. At the end of this list, which may certainly be given other attributes, it is important to me personally to turn the focus of all of us to an essential topic in this context: the linkage of the systems with each other and the integration of the operational flow into this infrastructure. Also here, a very short example. As you know, for the European spectators now, or the European listeners in our webinar, you know the situation in the EU, that we have some problems with national level and EU level, and some of the member states are creating their own environment, which is okay and fine. And we have, for instance, and that's the example, a very comprehensive single window approach, which is at the moment on the way to be implemented in Poland. Very supported by the Polish government and carried out by Polish customs, where they connect a lot of different players from other administrations and agencies, and they saw by themselves that it might be a good idea to have a connection also to port systems, which is a very new approach in Poland as well. There is no PCS at the moment, but they are working on it. And Polish customs realized that it makes sense to have a separate work group to support the common goal of having an interaction and a linkage between that governmental single window and the upcoming new PCS in Poland. And also another example from another area in the world, Djibouti. We got the experience that Djibouti was also looking for a kind of a connection to the Asikuda system. So what I want to bring you as a message now is really think about the linkage of the systems. And I used to say it very often especially to the native speakers. I like very much the English word of interoperability, because it's not that easy to say, but that is really a key figure. The authority side is one thing. The connection to the systems in the private sector is another matter. The redesign of organizational flows also plays a major role here. In my opinion, the key to success lies in the questions around rethinking the responsibilities. That means, how do you have your set up your structure regarding responsibilities amongst customs offices in your countries? Then, of course, possible automation steps. The design of pre-clearance activities, you heard that as well from Frank, but that is really also a very good option or possibility to speed up your cross-border movement processes. Then the revision of opening hours and availabilities. It makes no sense when your goods have to be stopped because the veterinary office is only open for 2 hours and you have a lot of permits to be controlled or checked by veterinary. Then the consideration of establishing trusted trade lanes with other important trading partners, and the inclusion of community systems as reliable partners for the success of the overall digital landscape in our discussion today. What's about new technologies? The use of new technologies is often mentioned at the same time as data exchange and digitization. Is that really right? When I put this question, or when I put it this way, then I want to make it clear that technology is not everything, and it is an accompanying component. I had the pleasure to present in front of more than 160 countries at the stage at the World Customs Organization about future thinking and forecast methodologies in the customs area. I don't want to bore you now with all the details of that meeting, but what I can tell you is that a big number of countries thought that okay, when we are talking about future activities and foresight activities, then we are talking about new technologies. No, we are not talking only about technologies. Technologies are somewhere a tool, a helping tool for us to make progress, but it is not everything. So artificial intelligence or ideas for using data pipeline mechanisms or even blockchain should not be the dominant elements around the approaches or initiatives that can really be implemented or make sense for each business case or the respective economic area. Rather, it is about developing a truly sustainable concept that reflects the requirements of the domestic market. This should not mean disconnecting from the rest of the global supply chain. At this point, I would like to emphasize the importance of proper networking again. After we all have listened very intensively and carefully to the interesting remarks from the perspective of global approaches, which were presented by Frank before, please allow me to take you on a very short journey to the EU. And I want to start with, and I hope you remember what I said in the beginning, that the legal framework is one crucial thing. So let's start with legal framework. From the EU's point of view, the Union Customs Code should be mentioned here. Of course, that is the Bible for all the legal activities in the customs area. The Basic Legal Act means the Union Customs Code as the Basic Legal Act is supplemented, among other things, by the so-called work program. And this forms the necessary legal basis for the IT systems to be directly implemented for customs clearance. Other necessary IT developments, for instance, new basic technologies or preparations for future projects, are also planned and monitored transparently and centrally in a comprehensible manner using a further tool, which is called the MASP, Multi-Annual Strategic Plan. Why do I mention that here? I like to give peoples from outside the EU now an insight or an idea how the structure should be, that you have really a transparent and a centrally monitored and plannable tool where you have all your IT activities on one on one view. Let us take a brief look on at two initiatives as examples from the EU. The one is the ICS2 system, and the other I mentioned before also something about the single window, but now the EU customs single window. The ICS, the import control system, is the risk management system for the EU customs administrations. The new version meets the requirements of a modern monitoring and risk analysis tool and helps to speed up the flow of goods at the EU external borders. In addition to fulfilling the mandate for safety and security, the new ICS system also stands for improved protection of the interests of economic operators through better separation of data responsibilities. That means simply that not the shipping lines have to submit all the data by themselves, and there may be or might be sensible data which other parties in the whole chain don't want to give into the hands of the shipping lines. That was before not the case. With the new version, it will be. The EU customs single window, what stands that for? This system, I have to say that we should make a clear split here between what is a customs clearance system in each and every member state of the EU and what is the EU customs single window. So the customs single window of the EU will not replace the declaration systems on national level. This system is on its way to simplifying the actual clearance of goods flows and also to making it more effective and efficient. It will connect the systems of the partner competent authorities, again, veterinary, phytosanitary, whoever, and creates an interoperable environment for all data related to the required information of permits and licenses in the customs clearance process. That means for the declarant to have the possibility to submit all necessary data once at the point where he will lodge his customs declaration. It will not, again, replace the customs declaration system itself. It will be linked to it and linked afterwards, or bring the other concerned systems together. It will also allow, and that is also one of the functionalities of that system, that will be possible for declarants or obliged persons to simplify extremely the process of the application for concerned permits to get it granted. So I can talk now for hours to continue to give you more viewpoints on the efforts of digitize the customs world. But please allow me at the end of my explanations to address some important messages. And I really will keep it short, only to let the messages stand by themselves, and I will let it in your imagination or in your creativity what you can read out of it. So the first bullet point is share and cooperate. I think it is one of the most important messages what we hear nowadays each and every time. And I think it's not a surprise for you. We are all coming here out of the port community, cargo community, systems, operators, environment, and that's why community approach, share, cooperate, bring the community together is one of the real important things. Then I mentioned that several times in my presentation. Link the data flows by themselves, and then afterwards link it to the concerned processes. It makes no sense that you have nice data in your systems, but the video gate is not working. So that is really also one of the important messages. Then what is, I think, especially personally, I would like to emphasize that, is that we are not talking about the replacement of existing systems or existing solutions. We are talking about keep them, analyze them, and again, maybe you think I'm going to repeat that too much, but again, you have to think about how to link them together, how to make an interoperation possible. In a lot of developing countries, the first fear is that when we are talking about the digitalization of that processes, that they think that the efforts they put already in their systems are, no longer valid, and they have to go for a new environment and a new system. No, please do not misunderstand that. It is not the replacement. Last few bullet points. We heard in Frank's presentation a lot about nice examples, very good examples, and best practices. We also have the experience that in a lot of areas and in a lot of discussions, each and every time people ask for, give us the best practice. And I would like to give you the message now, or address, emphasize it, highlight it, that it is not in each and every case about best practice. It's good to know examples, to have a look on it, to get in contact with people, to ask for experiences. But you have to understand the concept behind the thing, what you want to implement. And when you once have a clear view on the concept, it makes no difference if you are from a very high sophisticated environment, yes or no. It is really that you take the concept, what you have understood, and you start to think about your local needs, the needs for your community, and then you start to think about, or that is also a suggestion, a recommendation, to go for a phased approach and not the big bang. So last point from my side is you should also ask yourself, is every technological trend fitting my needs? And then you are going to evaluate if it's really a thing what you should consider, for instance, to have a blockchain mechanism for whatever use case where there is already an existing solution for it. So thank you very much for listening to my explanations, and now I'm open to answer questions, I guess, or to receive your remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Uwe, for your explanation about everything what's happening at these moments on customs level. And you also hit upon the wording of harmonization and a number of topics. In the meantime, we've got a number of questions from the audience, and I would like to start the questions which I got from the audience before I will put forward my own questions, if you will be able to and happy to answer this. The first question, Frank, comes from Nico de Kouwer, Port of Antwerp, as you know. The question is on the availability of national customs platforms, what is, seen from your experience, a minimum SLA that a national customs platform has to be or should have available now that digitalization and worldwide digital trade is increasing so fast? Should it be 95%, 97%, or even more? I know that the critical factor for PCSs is 99.5 to 99.8% these days. Do you know what's the average at this moment, or the regular, the rules at customs, basically?
Yes, Hans, thanks for the question, especially Nico, thanks for the question. Well, the first thing I want to say is that perhaps one should not only look at one figure in percentage of availability, because if you calculate availability over 1 month, then you could have in one go, if you have one big failure, you can have, if it's 99%, you can have 430 minutes of unavailability before you're at the border of your 99%. So it's not enough to have that. There is another element which should be taken on board in the service level agreement, which is time to restore. And therefore, for me, time to restore in an electronic environment should be something like 15 to 20 minutes. When the system doesn't work, you must rely on the fact that you go and drink a coffee. And when you have finished your coffee and exchanged the latest news with your colleague, you go back to work and it is operational again. So for me, that is something that should be taken into account. In unavailability, you also have to make a difference between scheduled unavailability and unscheduled availability. Scheduled could be, for example, the new rules on e-commerce come on board, they bring in a lot more declaration, and they need to make a upgrade of the system. They will do this most probably on a Saturday evening after 10 o'clock. And the next Sunday morning, it will be up and running at the latest by 6 o'clock. So for that, you could allow a bit more unavailability. But for me, unavailability during business hours should be around 99.9%, which would mean you have 3/4 of an hour unavailability per month. That's 3 times you will be forced to drink a coffee when the system is not available. I think that would be good. If you think about electronic payment, we wouldn't also accept much more of an interruption than there even a few minutes. So for me, customs to be really at the top of their professional abilities, they should have unforeseen unavailability, maximum 20 minutes. And as I said, not more than 3, maybe 4 a month. That would be for me the limit. When I worked still at the European Commission, this is one of the reasons I never agreed to develop the paper backup forms, because if people have paper backup forms, they're relaxed in the performance of the system. If there are no paper forms, which anyway are difficult to use, you don't have enough staff. But if there is no plan B with paper, then people go to other solutions like they do in banking, load balancing. If one system is down, they just shift it to the other system. They must have at 2 locations, always one system running. So I think that's the way forward. And I don't think now after the pandemics that there is much opposition to this. I think that's a battle, hopefully we have won. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, for your extended answer. So hopefully that Nico,
maybe I can add to that two remarks, or 3. One is you have to be clear when we are talking again about a construction like the EU, that you have some countries in the EU, they have really to deal with a volume which is absolutely extreme to compare to other countries. And when we are talking about the availability of the systems, maybe some of the countries are not on the same level, or they don't have to be on the same level, because the domestic market and the economic operators in that countries are not really asking for that high availability. The thing is only that two different informations, because Nico was asking that question. On our internal IPCSA community page, there is in the customs area a link to the EU dashboard mechanism where you can look after each and every day, or if you want each and every hour, how the availability of the EU systems is currently. So that is really a dashboard available for that, to control it and to look what is really going on. That I haven't checked it now in the last few weeks, but that's why I'm not aware now about the fact if it's really split it into really each and every member state itself or as a total. That's the one thing. And to add to the thoughts of Frank before, yes, the EU has also created and is extending it from system to system, which goes into real operation. The business continuity guidance, which is then also a kind of a possibility to go to your national administration and say, wait a moment, you have agreed to that business continuity, and please take care that you are available in the next hour. So only as an information in addition.
Thank you for your extended view on this. And indeed, for the IPCSA members, they can have a look at the IPCSA.community site to find out more and to link to, let's say, the status of the various systems all over Europe, isn't it? Right. I got another question from Osin Guasmia. I hope I pronunciate the name correct. And Osin is asking, can you please come back to single maritime window and clarify the difference with PCS? Thanks and best regard. Osin, you say explicitly maritime single window because we're talking about single window in total. Maritime single window is well, of course, it's a part of it, but it's more directed to, let's say, the IMO part, IMO for fall 1 to 7. So I would say we focus on single window in total. So again, Uwe, can I ask you whether you can tell something about difference between PCS and single window?
So when we are talking about, I would like to add the custom single window as well.
Yeah.
So, but start with PCS and maritime single window. At the end of the day, the PCS is for each and every local port, and maybe you can help me then with your view, Hans. Really the single window for all the stakeholders involved in the process, a kind of a data hub for, as I said, everyone. That means the governmental players connected on local level, on maybe not only local level. Maybe to give you an example, from Germany, we are a federal state, or a federal state. So we have federal agencies. Customs, for instance, is a federal agency which is centralized. And then you have the port authority, which is, of course, not a federal one, because it's related on the one hand to the port and on the other hand to the state in the federation. So and you have you are acting as a data hub for all that players, starting from the forwarding industry up to the shipping lines and the governmental players, as I said. Going now to the maritime single window, then you have a very special approach, which is more or less related to transport information data and the reporting formalities, so-called, for the maritime players in the whole process. That means it's, for instance, to make the example very simple, the forwarders have no benefit out of that, but they've been benefiting from a PCS in place. And now I built a bridge to a custom single window. When we are talking about that in the EU, then the maritime single window of the EU includes a tiny part which is covering the entry data for customs purposes. That means presentation notification, arrival notification, something like that. But the whole of the declaration flow, which is then carried out afterwards, after the arriving of the goods, is then handled totally separately in the customs environment, and therefore is then the customs single window again connecting the other administrations, which has nothing to do with the maritime arrival of the vessels in the ports, more of really the permit data, which is related to the goods. So I hope I could a little bit answer the question. It's of course not a global view, but maybe you can guys add a little bit more from your viewpoints. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that the answer has been extensive enough for Oisin. Oisin, if you have more questions on this subject, please raise your question, and always afterwards this presentation we can give you an answer on that. No problem. I go to India, I think, to Yeya Veerapandian. I hope I pronounce the name correct. It's difficult for us, those names, but it doesn't matter so much. It's about the question especially, and I want to zoom in the question and to bring the question towards Frank. On the virtual customs corridors, whether it is implemented anywhere, any significant benefits, do you know?
Yes, I can answer. I must admit, first of all, that this concept is being implemented in several countries. Now, I understand the question is, where does it function?
Yes.
One good example is the border between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. You have Bahrain is an island or a nearly island, and there is a road 25 kilometers with several bridges, and there it's implemented because you cannot do the border formalities on the bridge because there's also lots of people going to work and going shopping and things like that. So there it's implemented. The difference for cargo transport with the pre-clearance pre-clearance system or principle being applied based on technological control on the road is phenomenal. That has really been a difference between nearly always traffic jams and no more traffic jams. So that's really an example which works, and on which in the internet you can find examples. Another example where it functions well is not between countries, but inside a country, and namely Italy, because Italy has a number of what we call dry ports. They're like assembly points inland where goods then are moved through a certain road or railroad to the actual port, be it Genova or Venice or Trieste or others, and they have applied this principle in practice with the application of the technology which I have described. So you nearby in Europe, you can see it in a number of ports in Italy, a bit further away, but halfway to India, I would say, in the border of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It already works, and they're building other ones at other border points with Saudi Arabia. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Yes, well, to tell you, in the Netherlands, I know a project called Extended Gate, which means that on rail and barge, containers can be moved from terminals to inland points without having to present additional documents. So the cargo is then to be declared at the inland gate, at the inland port, at the inland terminal especially. And I would encourage, let's say, PCS members of IPCSA to be the middleman between agencies, terminals, customs and inland ports to encourage these processes, because it reduces, let's say, so much the traffic in the port area. So reducing the, let's say, the car traffic in the port area reduces the CO2 emission, which means that we're working on the sustainability, which we are aiming for 2030 and 2050. So it should be great to be encouraged, and I think that PCS, as the middleman, is the, let's say, center where the data from all the parties come together and can have transparency on the traffic all over. So yeah, the next one is, and I just talked about the data from the various parties coming together. I got a question from China, I think. I can't read the name because it's in China's letter, sorry for that. But how to approach system security and different stakeholders' data ownership. Yeah, so actually, when you look at the data, who is the owner of the data? talking about the data ownership, most of the data comes from the shipping agents, from the carriers, and is then, let's say, updated and added by terminals, by customs on control position, etc., etc. And here's the question about the security of the different data elements and the data ownership. Uwe, can you give a brief view how DBAs handle that? You're muted.
Hans, as you know, I'm a customs guy,
Yeah.
so I'm a trusted party anyway. So
Well,
when I would answer that question, I would lie. So no, not from the security point of really data ownership and how it is really set up technically. No idea.
no, that's indeed a different point. There are many authentication procedures available in the world. I know in Europe and especially in the Netherlands, they are working on iShare these days, which means that iShare is able to help and to support, let's say, the authentication rules and setup, so that people are known with the rules and that they are getting entrance to the various, let's say, data elements where they are allowed to be. And apart from that, when you have your data available as shipping agent and you send it to the PCS as neutral or trusted party, and data comes in from a terminal and the forwarder wants to see the data, still, let's say, the shipping agent is in the lead, but he allows that forwarding agent to see the data or not. So I think it's not a common global view on that. You have to look from port to port and from area or region, how to deal with that and how to set it up. But in what I know is that the basics are there, that it is instead of siloed information, to collaborate and to look for transparency as much as possible, to give the trade facilitation a boost. And how you do that is more about a technical point in your country themselves. So I hope that I have given our Chinese
maybe only from my to add to my non really qualified answer.
Yeah.
To add on that, of course, in the systems and in the PCS environment, you have a complex user rule set up. And not each and every user can say, but I think that is not really a surprising mechanism now for the discussion, because that is the normal, which has each and every IT environment is dealing with user or access and user rules.
Right. I don't
Hans,
see.
can I just answer?
Yes.
Just on the approach, you just need to make
Yes.
sure, as Uwe and Hans have said, in terms of roles and responsibilities are the key things. You need to make sure you know the roles and responsibilities of each of the parties, and those parties have an agreement with yourselves as a operator of a platform, a system, that you are allowed to share their data for the processes that they're allowed. So you need to be really clear about that. The security and technology, many different ways of doing it. But I think the key thing to it is actually your relationship with your users. That's the key part of it, is making sure that you have some legal basis for sharing that data. And just a comment on the single window side of things, just think of single window as for regulatory reporting. That's really what single windows are for, reporting for regulatory purposes, customs, ship reporting, those things. Port community systems enable that, but they also focus on the operational part of the processes, where the goods are, how they can be moved, are they available for collection. So PCSs looks at operational and administrative side, and single window tends to look at the administrative side. So I just thought I'd add those two comments into that, and there's a couple of comments in questions in the chat, Hans.
Thank you. Yeah, I see. Right. Okay. My next question, Frank, will be to you. It comes from Javier Gallardo. Do you think the use of digital signature will be globally adopted by customs and recognized, and may a blockchain solution help a customs declaration on the exports to be used on the input for, on the input for import, just like multiple filings for one declaration. Does it make sense? What do you think?
Yeah, so in fact, there are two questions. One was on the e-signature,
Yeah.
and then one on what they call my export is your
Yes.
your import. Exactly.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
it.
So
Right.
on e-signature, I think definitely this is the future. It is necessary. We need to exchange information between trusted partners, and there, of course, electronic signature is one of the means, or the main means to achieve that. Now, the form that the electronic signature take may different from system to system, or from type of exchange to type of exchange. There are still a number of, I would say, of approaches. So it is not worldwide standardized as such, but as long as for the moment people find ways they agree that this is a trusted way to sign a document and make it trustworthy to exchange, that is fine. For me, the blockchain is one of the means to do that, because it's highly secured. So that's a possibility. You have people who trust in simple things like a user ID and a password. You have then the real electronic signature on which there are regulations, but unfortunately those regulations, they differ a bit from one country to another, but there are UN initiatives also to standardize that better. So I think for the time being, it is something definitely that will grow in its implementation. And probably, like in many of these cases, with time, it will either be fully harmonized, or you will have a few main technologies which people will use to secure the transfer of information. Now, on the information exchange between authorities of different countries, this is now mainly based on international agreements. So for some countries, this is possible, but you must have a legal basis. At least in Europe and also in the United States, it needs to be based on a legal agreement which lays down the conditions for what information is exchanged, for what reasons, and so on. So the rules of the game must be agreed. I think that will stay as well like that in the future. It has a potential, of course, if it would be used more widely to reduce non-compliant behavior or even fraud. It's widely known that the value of goods may diminish a lot when it transfers from the exporting country to the importing country, and the simple reason is that on the importing side you have to pay import duties, which are normally based on a certain percentage of the value of the goods. So the lower the value of the goods is, the less you have to pay. So exchanging that information in terms of correct collecting of duties can of course be interesting, but on the other hand, often if you exchange that information, it has also other data fields, and it can lead to cutting out the middleman if you have transactions with several persons. It is in many cases, unfortunately, corruption is still there, and then they sell the information on prices they know about, on partners in transactions. So where it has a lot of prospect and is positive in principle, the practical implementation is difficult, one must admit. Thank you.
Hans, one remark from my side to the signature thing, because the question came from Javier, so out of Europe. As you have heard, the EU Commission has launched as well in the tax suit environment a system or an initiative which is called the UMDS, the Unified User Management and Digital Signature. And when you look on that, then I have to tell you, we have a long way before us, not because of not implementing that system, but your question was more to have a harmonized digital signature across, globally valid one. But when you look on the EU-MDS approach, then the identifiers, for instance, is really set up on the national level and reused then via a central identification hub. So we do not have, even in the EU, in the next years, one harmonized digital signature approach. Thanks.
Thank you. In the questionnaire and the chats, I see a question from Rudy Hemmelus, which is in the meantime answered by Frank, I see, but I will just go back to the question for all of the people in the audience. It's about the EU FT, it's EU EFTI regulation, enables authorities to pool transport documents such as the eCMR. The eCMR is also a supporting document for customs declarations. How do you see the integration in the future? Frank, shall I give the answer, or do you give the answer yourself again?
Yeah, I can give the answer. I start by repeating what I have written. So I said that I believe that in the future, transport information and customs information can be merged in a single data set, especially for the movement of goods, because that of course is parallel with the definition of transport. So transit, for example, would be the first example to do it, and it would benefit both sectors. Now you need to create a CMR and you need to create a transit document. If the data set has enough information that both authorities, transport and customs authorities, can find in the one declaration what they need, you only need one, and both are digital, so they could in principle be merged. It's a matter of agreeing on the data set and then agreeing on the format of the messages. And as I said in my presentation, so the Electronic Freight Transport Initiative, the new regulation of end of last year, foresees that for all means of transport or all modes of transport, there will be electronic documents. So of course, this also involves not only road like CMR, but also rail and also inland waterways. And of course, for maritime, there is a separate regulation which colleagues have already referred to. So that is something for the future. It will take time. This is being built in the next 5 years, and then the merger will start after that. So I think between 25 and 2030, then these things will come in as possibilities of simplification because of the availability of trusted digital information. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. In the chat, in the meantime, I will open the chat again. You might have seen that Richard has put in 2 messages. One is about where you can find the presentations. So you will find the link over there, and there's also a link available to our YouTube channel where you can find back the complete webinar later on. So when you copy those 2 links and later on you link to, let's say, our website or to the YouTube channel of IPCSA, you can of course replay what has been said and has been shown to you in a way that you can sit back relaxed, my dear friend Uwe. In that way you can. Yeah. Frank, I have another question, a question from my side, and I was looking at your slides, and one of your slides says advanced logistics trade platforms to integrate border and airport cross-border. Airport, air and seaport, of course. Information, data and automated operations in a single digital seamless process. You know, and you see it on my background, IPCSA has launched its neutral network of trusted network for port-to-port and cross-border information data exchange. Would it, in your eyes, be an option for what you named advanced logistics trade platform, where also government-to-government processes between ports globally are being linked? Do you think that the network trusted networks can be a platform to facilitate this?
Yes, Hans, thanks for the question. Yes, the short answer is yes, I believe in that. And also I can confirm that there is a request not only through the activities of IPCSA and the Protect initiative you have taken, as is visible on this side behind me, but also I was in a virtual webinar in Ireland just before the weekend, which was organized by the Irish Maritime Development Organization, and they were very interested in the possibilities of exchanging information between the different port authorities on of course, for them on the Irish side and with other countries, especially like with France, with the Brexit and so on. And they want to start a pilot project even, it's called International Fast and Secure Trade Lanes. And they will try to improve, you know, the paper flow or the information flow and going faster and exchange information. And definitely there perhaps also IPCSA could be involved to explain what is available. So it's definitely something which fits very well within the digitalization and exchange through trusted channel of information. And I believe also, as I said, there is a genuine interest in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Well, it's good to have that information so that we can knock on the door and see what we can exchange on views on that. So very good. Thank you so much. Uwe, about, well, you had a question basically about harmonization. Should we harmonize systems and should we look for harmonization within the customs as well? Well, my opinion is yes. When I look, for instance, for harmonization, the question to you, when you look at ICS and ICS2, there is always that entry summary declaration, the ENS, for cargo moving to Europe to give notice to the first port in Europe about the cargo on board 24 hours before loading. You know the process. We know in the US you have the 10+2 procedure. I know such the same kind of procedure is in Japan and in China, but they're all different procedures, and all those carriers moving cargo from a certain place or port in the world to another place, they have to look into the Wikipedia, what to report, how to report, etc., etc. Do you know whether it's common sense or whether these kinds of processes will come into, well, let's say in a way harmonized?
To be honest with you, I don't see it at the moment.
No.
No. How to say it? The problem is that when you go out and you look into, when you are allowed to take a look a little bit more deeper and in detail in how customs organizations around the globe are working, then the first question is, how is set up your risk environment? That means the risk engines, how they work together with other information sources and so on and so forth. Yeah. And to be honest with you, when we are talking about 10+2, for instance, then you can be aware that this is not the information which is sufficient enough for the US to have a clear risk analysis on it. So they have from other sources, other informations as well. A lot of that, to stay on the example of the US, a lot of that information are coming from partner states and partner governmental entities. Also to give the relation between the US and the EU here, or bring it into the discussion, is that EU customs organizations are sending over to the US a huge number of data elements, what they receive already on their side as export data and so on, for only for risk purposes. And the 10+2 is at the end not really, of course it's there and they use it and you have to lodge it, but that is not the base for the risk analysis. So that is a part of the answer. when you look now on what we have in the entry summary declaration in Europe, you have much more data elements than the 10+2. And then the question sign comes up, why?
Thanks.
Maybe because the US is giving us not their data back, what we giving over to them. So that is more, yeah, a provocative statement. By the way, you remember when we were on the maritime conference in Poland in 2000, when was it, 19?
19.
And there was also in one of the meeting rooms where there was a big meeting going on with Polish customs, and it was related to the relationship between Poland and the US, how they exchange data amongst them, the two government sides. And the presenter from the US, he is, yeah, not the head of, but he was, yeah, higher level from the risk department of Customs and Border Protection in the US. And I asked him in that meeting, do you see a value and do you want to extend your activities by asking for data also from the private sector, like, for instance, from cargo system operators? And he said it would be good, dot. So that was the answer. Yeah, I think you touched a very interesting point there. Is there harmonization on the way of risk data? I would say not yet, but maybe Frank, sorry, Frank, if you want to give your opinion on that.
Well, yeah, short. I think it's a domain in full evolution. People, on the slide I showed this PenCP website. You will see they do a lot on exactly that subject. And for the moment, this is in full research and exploration. I would agree with you, Owe, that we're not yet in that state of harmonization and one single approach. People look in different directions, different sources, different sectors, and a lot of interesting things come up. But after that, the dust will settle, and then they can think about doing. If they find what's the best way to do it, what has optimal results, then probably this will be taken over by others. So I agree with Uwe, not yet, but I don't exclude it in the further future. Thank you.
Maybe one last thought about that. You have also to take into account that you have, of course, differences in the countries and the areas in the world, not only culturally. Also, when you think, for instance, about the Arabic countries, they have a much more, yeah, well, let's say the imported goods staying in the countries there, in the Emirates or in Saudi Arabia, they are more related to food, agricultural things. So they have another view on when you say 70% of that goods remaining in the country, the rest is transshipped, or a bigger number of different commodities are transshipped and not staying in the countries. Then you have another approach on your risk profiling than a country who is not that much related to agriculture imports. So you see, there is also a kind of a difference in the discussion.
Thank you, Frank. I'm looking at the time and I'm looking at the number of spectators still on the webinar. I can imagine that people get puzzled after 2 hours of listening to us and all the questions and things around it. And I hope, dearly hope that you all will review, let's say, the presentation and find out the pieces and bits and pieces which are very important for you or for your colleagues. Thank you so much, Frank. Thank you so much, Uwe, for giving your professional insights of what's happening in Europe and globally. It has been great to have you here on the floor on this seminar, and it's really great to have you around everywhere where we go and where we find each other back again and have questions about customs affairs, but not only that ones, but also about business to business and business to government, which is also very important. Thank you for highlighting all the aspects, and I will close the seminar by just giving information about IPCSA itself. IPCSA has this year's anniversary, 10-year anniversary, and that will be on June the 15th. And on June the 15th, we will have a webinar with Pore Technology International from IPCSA with the celebration of our 10th year anniversary. So those people that are interested, have a look at our website and register for our anniversary webinar at that time. So once more, thank you very much. Thank you very much, audience, for listening to us this long time. I see a lot of people, well, the party one by one are now hooking off, but I'm very proud that we had so many spectators from all over the world. Thank you, and have a good evening, good day, and good afternoon, of course, for those that are still working. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye now.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.